Hey, welcome to the Electric Playground. It's Beautiful Outside edition. Today, I've asked a few friends from across the industry to help me say goodbye to this beautiful thing. So yes, we are minutes away from the Nintendo Switch 2 launching and being available for people all over the world. And so it has come time to say sayonara to the Nintendo Switch 1, which debuted in 2017. Can you believe it? 8 years ago. And boy, has it given us a tremendous amount of fun. I have talked extensively about how much this console has meant to me. It is my favorite game console that has shipped so far, and there are a bunch of cool reasons for that. But I wanted to do something different, a little bit special today. I prepared a bunch of questions and we got lots of cool responses. And we're going to start with the very first question. The Nintendo Switch was successful because ...
The reason why the Switch was successful, in my opinion, was because you could play on the go. Plus, that first year, there was multiple exclusives coming out. So every month since the launch of the original Switch, there was an exclusive game. And one of them that really helped out to even promote the system even more was Mario Kart 8.
The Nintendo Switch was so popular and so successful because it took what Nintendo did right about handhelds and what Nintendo did right about consoles and put them both together in one handy package that is both handheld and console. We no longer needed to have a Nintendo 3DS and then also a Wii. We could just have the Switch. And also it had amazing titles, great first-party support from Nintendo for so many of their key franchises, like a real absurd amount of quality first-party Nintendo games. Super Mario Wonder, Super Mario Odyssey, The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. This thing was a launch title. It looked fantastic. The idea of having a console-quality Zelda game on the go, and then the fact that you had all of these amazing virtual console titles, your favorites from Super Nintendo, Game Boy, NES, then also later Nintendo 64, Sega Genesis. This thing is loaded. And then you've got a ton of indie titles as well. Yes, the shop is a little bit of a navigational nightmare. You really have to know what you want to get before you search. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time on there. I think that's one thing that Nintendo could probably, hopefully improve with the Switch 2, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that. That said, there's so many games on the Nintendo Switch that are worth playing and are so fun to play.
The Switch was successful because it was a hybrid handheld console and you could switch between them very easily. And Nintendo's always had great success, well, mostly had great success in the portable video game arena, so it couldn't go wrong.
The Nintendo Switch was successful for dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of reasons, but I got 60 seconds, so I got 5 for you right now. Number one, it just worked. It's perfect. We all wanted a hybrid system. We wanted a handheld. We loved our 3DS. We loved our DS, our Game Boys, of course. We also loved our consoles, so they smashed them together into one, and the bloody thing worked. You docked it, and it was on your TV. You took it off, and you went out for a walk with your dog or on a rooftop party with all of your friends. Number two, the launch was perfect. They wrote the damn playbook on how to do a console launch. We hadn't seen anything before. We probably never will again. You launch the thing with the greatest game maybe ever made, a generational effort with Breath of the Wild. In the same year, we get Mario Odyssey, we get Splatoon 2, we got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, we got ARMS, so shout out to ARMS. That's reason number two. Number three, they went all in on one platform. People forget this. They had the DS, 3DS, handheld world, and then they had the console world, all developers working on a single thing. They crushed it, man. That made a huge difference just with all that content, all those games coming out all the time. And they got the third-party support. That's reason number four. Finally, after the Wii U, no games are coming out on the Wii U. They couldn't stop games from coming out on the Switch. We had 2K, we had The Witcher, we had Impossible Ports, so shout out to that. And reason number five, that Snap.
For me, the Nintendo Switch was such a big success because it really illustrated why it's important to find innovations rather than just pushing technology, pushing those pixels. So many games nowadays are all about, oh, we need the highest fidelity possible, and we're kind of seeing diminishing returns on that. But the Switch really showed you that, yeah, it was less powerful than a lot of the other systems, but that didn't matter because it had the games and it had the ability to bring those games with you no matter where you were. And I think that's been something that's really important in this gaming space, where it's kind of giving people that freedom to play these games wherever they want. And we've seen so many different companies copy that. The Nintendo Switch really made that form factor possible and successful in the mainstream. We've seen everything from the Steam Deck, the Asus ROG Ally, to even streaming services like Xbox Cloud Gaming, really taking that philosophy of bringing games to the consumer. And that's really, in a lot of ways, all because of the Nintendo Switch.
Why was the Nintendo Switch successful? Honestly, it's a couple things. First, it's the games and the smart decisions of the hardware choices that were made. But there's something a lot of people don't actually talk about a ton, which I think is kind of a big factor, actually. When people were stuck indoors for a couple years during COVID, think about it. Everybody had a Switch. Everyone wanted to have a Switch. Animal Crossing was bringing people together. Hell, Gary Whitta put together an Animal Crossing talk show during COVID. It was this weird cultural moment when the Switch was like the one device that everyone can have. You can have multiple people in a house bonding together over their favorite games and having a fun time. And so you combine that with everything else, the games, the hardware, and just the fact that you had a small portable handheld that could plug into a TV and take with you wherever you wanted to go. Nintendo kind of had a great idea at an opportune time, and it really kind of made a lot of people all the better for it.
One, it was a hybrid console. It launched at a time when there was nothing like it in the market, and it eventually spawned a really incredible handheld gaming market. So, having the fact that you could take it on the go with you on the plane, you could take it with you on a train, you could basically fly around the world and have your console from home coming along with you in your backpack was really cool. And then it launched with a really versatile library. You had some really great first-party games like ARMS that launched. You had Snipper Clips. You had Super Mario Odyssey. And throughout the years, there were some really great revisions of the hardware where we got the Switch Lite, we had the Switch OLED, we had the Joy-Cons that were pretty versatile in how they handle it. You could play with two players on two little Joy-Cons, and everything came together in a really wonderful package. You had a lot of value for a really affordable price for families. Like, people can now play their games on the go. They could also buy games on the go, and everything kind of came together in this really unique way that very few companies have been able to replicate.
Why was the Nintendo Switch so successful? Well, quite simply, the games. When Nintendo started dedicating itself just to the Nintendo Switch, it wasn't splitting its development teams into handheld and home consoles. It was developing for one platform, that platform, of course, being the Nintendo Switch. This then meant, of course, that the steady stream of games were there. It wasn't a desert like it was the Wii U. We had games every single quarter, and pretty massively good-sized Nintendo games that we all wanted to play, first-party games. They were bringing back games from the Wii U that we hadn't played before, getting a remaster or a refresh. They were taking games or IPs that we hadn't played in a while and had an opportunity to experience that. Plus, indies were showing up. It was a fantastic console to play indie games in. You combine those two things, and it was a no-brainer the Nintendo Switch was going to be a success.
The Nintendo formula. The Nintendo formula is what did it. The two things, right? A console that thinks differently, has a quirk or a gimmick, so to speak, and the games. And here, the Switch had the perfect new concept to it, the portability, the hybrid aspects, the Joy-Cons, and then actually really great games to back it up. And I think the marriage of those two things just generated so much excitement and curiosity about it that it was able to be a complete home run and have legs for years and years and years.
The Switch was successful because outside of being a very different name than the Wii to the Wii U, it was very much showcasing from its previews that it was a portable system that would still allow home console capabilities on the go. And without it, it wouldn't have ushered in Steam Deck, I feel. And its success being an innovator definitely allowed it to bring a lot of new players to the games industry and to games as well.
The Switch was successful because that concept, that all-in-one concept, on the one hand, yes, just the Switch and the little Switch sound and all of that stuff, and that idea that you can take basically console-level games on the go as a handheld. Obvious, very clear selling point. I think when we started seeing things like Doom and The Witcher 3 and all of that stuff on there, it was pretty crazy. And it doesn't hurt that, like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey were there like right away. The next part of why that's so great is because Nintendo is now using one console to cater to different markets. Handhelds are great in Japan, consoles are great in North America and Europe, and they are not splitting themselves up. Yeah, not only do we get a big Mario and Zelda game, but we get the entire Xenoblade series. We get a bunch of Fire Emblem games. We get several Paper Mario games. Lots and lots of remakes of things, obviously, which, rubs some people the wrong way. I think that really helped Nintendo put out a consistent amount of games and quality in ways that they had struggled to in the past.
The Nintendo Switch was successful because it became the first true hybrid handheld gaming device and console all in one. I didn't think they were going to be able to pull it off when it was originally announced, but the fact that I can take AAA Nintendo games on the go, on a plane, at the park, wherever, but then also dock it and play it on my living room television is the innovation that they were able to create with the Nintendo Switch.
The Nintendo Switch was successful because it was innovative. I mean, they've made handheld systems before, and so have the competitors, right? We've gotten PSPs, and now since there's been so many handheld devices, but we really hadn't seen something like the Nintendo Switch until the Nintendo Switch. Getting these like AAA gaming experiences and to essentially be able to play them on a plane, to be able to play them wherever you are, was something that was very unique. Couple that with just like the style of the Switch, being able to rip off the Joy-Cons, make a controller out of it. There were so many innovative ideas with the Nintendo Switch, and I think that's a large part as to why it's worked and why it is such a successful console. And then when you put all that aside, what it really comes down to and what allows a console like the Nintendo Switch to have such longevity, it's the games. It's really as simple as that. There is such an amazing library of games to choose from that are exclusive to the Nintendo Switch that are console sellers. And at the end of the day, that's all consumers are looking for. They just want fun games to play.
Awesome answers, lots of great observations there, and I know I'm treading over some of the same topics in my response here, but I don't think the Nintendo Switch was successful because of just one thing. Yes, the hybrid console format was the perfect device at the right time, but I think even more essential in the ingredients for the Nintendo Switch's success is that it crossed generations. Nintendo did a very good job at remaking games that we had wanted to see for a very long time, like Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, bringing lots of great classics through the Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack service, which has just grown and grown and become kind of irresistible, I think, for anybody that's been a lifer Nintendo fan like myself. And then they delivered cool, crazy experiences that we weren't expecting, like Tetris 99 or F-Zero 99. And then brand new games that kind of shook up the entire format. Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild come to mind. They also brought over excellent Wii U games that not many people played. So it was a collection of all of these ingredients on a device that you could play anywhere and at home, all sort of systematically hitting month to month to month through the entire lifespan of the Nintendo Switch. It made the console kind of an irrefutable pickup for most players out there and a lot of families. And I think that's why the Nintendo Switch was a success. It wasn't just trading on the hardware and its uniqueness. It was this constant delivery of cool experiences that stretched across time. Now, I also asked this question for people on social media, and I got some great responses. Ian Boothby says Super Mario Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild. Both fun, grounded games with amazing scale. Then when COVID hit, Animal Crossing was much needed comfort. Solid Python says the promise of home console gaming on the go, which it delivered in spades. As someone who is obsessed with portable consoles, to me, it was and still is a literal dream come true. Nindy Nation said it was the first console launch since I was a parent of two in a very busy time ramping up in a new job and having my mom stay with us to help with my newborn son. I needed regular sanity breaks over the first year and the Switch was always there for me. Now my kids play it too. Hip Hop Dan says I was late to the Switch, Vic. Luigi's Mansion was the system seller for me, and I've been in love ever since. Tears of the Kingdom is definitely my greatest of all time for the system, and very excited for Nintendo Switch 2. Cosgrove Toon says variety, connectivity with family, and quality first-party games. Sean McGonigal says, as a lifelong Legend of Zelda fan, playing Ocarina of Time on my cousin's N64 and later learning there was a Super Nintendo version, playing Link's Awakening with my stepdad on his Super Nintendo, I had to play Breath of the Wild, and the fact I was able to go mobile with it blew my mind. Blair Farrell says it married Nintendo's two business lines and was the first of its kind device to let you take your software anywhere. The Switch, to me, is a great way to play games both new and old. Who would have thought that GoldenEye would come back and with online to boot? Abby Jam says the flexibility of play and the constant string of high-quality titles from Nintendo and third parties made the Switch my first choice in gaming until it started to show its age in newer ports. I suspect Switch 2 will likely be the same for me as long as the games I want are available physically. Oh, entering some precarious territory there, Abby. I've got some more thoughts on the Nintendo Switch from viewers and also from friends across the industry when we come back. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Electric Playground, celebrating the Nintendo Switch, the first Nintendo Switch, as the Nintendo Switch 2 is about to launch. I asked my friends across the industry, what is the best way to play Nintendo Switch?
The best way to play the Switch, in my personal opinion, is docked, mainly because it's a lot more comfortable, at least for me. I mean, playing handheld devices, it gives you nerd neck. I mean, I have that, I'm sure, but it would make it a lot worse if I was playing it in handheld mode all the time. Plus, with handheld, you have to use the buttons for the directional. I don't really care for that, at least for some games. I just prefer it docked.
Man, that's a trick question. Actually, that's probably the coolest thing about the Switch, however you want to play it. And that kind of opened up a lot of doors for a lot of people. Now, for years, I've always considered myself a mobile gamer, but I'd have to carry, a laptop with me or, any number of devices. I was expecting to have something big and clunky to carry around to plug into a TV whenever I got somewhere. With the Switch, the game changed, literally. I'm a handheld gamer. I play it like this all the time. I rarely dock my Switch, but when I do, I can play with the family. I even love the fact that I can take this on the road and challenge buddies, and I actually still do that. Like, I'll have a Smash Brothers tourney with a couple friends at a bar or something. That's kind of the strength and smarts of the Switch design. I use it as a handheld. It's always in my bag, always traveling with me. That, in my humble opinion, is the only way to play.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Big Chalk, represent level 857. My good friend Victor Lucas asked me, what's the best way to play the Nintendo Switch? And I gotta say, any way you can play it. If you put it on the dock and you want to play it on the TV, that's a great way to play it. If you want to play it on the go, play it on the go. Like, honestly, it's a really good system. Tons of hits, like tons of hit games in the library. You cannot go wrong. Any way you want to play that Switch, you play it, because it's great. Not gonna lie.
The best way I play Nintendo Switch is just out and about somewhere. Portably. Portably is best, but I take it a step further, right? Taking advantage of that great kickstand, having it propped up somewhere, cafe, whatever, somewhere where you're not normally playing games, you can. It's propped up here, and then the Joy-Cons in hand, just hunched over, just a Joy-Con here, Joy-Con here, just playing. Portability, of course, but the flexibility that this console allowed, just like I just loved essentially taking advantage of it as much as I could, because it still felt so novel years and years later.
What is the best way to play on the Switch? It has evolved over the years. When I first got the Switch, I would always just play it docked. I would only play it in handheld if I literally was leaving my home. But I found over the years, I kind of prefer handheld, regardless if I'm at home or on the go. I want to play it in handheld mode. So your mileage may vary on that, but that's what has happened to me over the past 8 years with the Nintendo Switch.
The best way to play the Nintendo Switch was on the go. I remember playing it for the first time while I was traveling from Miami to Los Angeles. Game changer. Playing Legend of Zelda and all these big AAA games on the go was amazing.
The best way to play Switch. Oh my gosh. If you are like me and you grew up in a household where there is only one real TV, you might have a small TV somewhere else, but it was always a fight to get to play video games on the big TV when you lived with your folks or whatever your roommate situation happened to be. The best thing about the Nintendo Switch is no more fights for the TV. You could play it on the big screen, or if someone needed to watch the TV for any other reason, you could just grab your console and go wherever else you wanted to. This thing was amazing for that, and I'm so glad that so many people got to use the Switch in this capacity. I always get a thrill when I'm seeing other people playing video games out wherever I am, if you're waiting at the airport or whatever. And the Nintendo Switch is the perfect on-the-go console because you get to play console quality games or, whatever game you want, really, anywhere you want. And that was a huge selling factor, a huge gimmick as well, but one that I think Nintendo pulled off really well.
Great responses there. Yeah, this is a tricky one because the Nintendo Switch, obviously, you can play it on the planes, trains, and automobiles, which is amazing. Don't drive and play Nintendo Switch. But you can play it on the big screen, and there are lots of beautiful games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Super Mario Odyssey and the Legend of Zelda titles that you want to see on the big screen. And you can also play it in tabletop mode and take the Joy-Con off and pass one and share it with a friend and get into a fight or something like that in Street Fighter, not in real life, in Street Fighter or something fun, Marvel vs. Capcom collection. But I think for me, my favorite way to play the Nintendo Switch has been docked. I really like to see these games on the big screen. And yes, I know there are some visual sacrifices that we make because the horsepower on the system hasn't been able to keep up with the best in the industry. But I'm always shocked at how much developers have been able to do, especially Nintendo, but then also a lot of these indie developers that have created just these gorgeous pixelated games. I'm thinking of Sea of Stars and The Messenger, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, playing some of these Capcom classics again. Of course, I love playing the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo stuff and the Game Boy Advance stuff on the big screen from Nintendo Switch Online, or the Konami collections, the Castlevania collections, and the Contra collections. So much fun. And then lots of other awesome indie games like Children of Morta or Owlboy or, of course, Celeste. Yeah, it's delivered some beautiful games, and I've loved playing them on my big screen. But you tell me, what is your favorite way to play the Nintendo Switch? Tell me in the comments below, and let's hear some more thoughts from viewers about why Nintendo Switch has become such a big success. Legend of Gamer 102 says, I echo all of the previous sentiments, but wanted to add one. Accessibility for visual impairment. Being able to play these high-profile games without being tethered to a TV is a game changer for me as someone with bad eyesight. Same with the PS Portal. I can have the screen as close as I need to. Miza says, affordable with good library, including indie deals and online store. Nice to have as an extra console in addition to a main, which in my case is a gaming PC. Concrete Milkshake says, it's the way to access and play first-party Nintendo games, and Nintendo makes some great games that are worth playing, even if it means the platform has useless features like a screen and battery that never get used. It's worth investing in the platform anyway because the quality of their software. Smith Home Video says the massive library of amazing games on the Switch is mind-blowing. The fact we got so many Mario and Zelda releases and they are all awesome. Plus the Switch Online classics are great to play on the go. Love reading those and love hearing from my friends from across the industry, and we've got a lot more ways to celebrate the Nintendo Switch when we come back. Welcome back to the Electric Playground and our celebration of all things Nintendo Switch. Now, we know that Nintendo Switch has become a phenomenal success, but it wasn't always that way. There was some question about what Nintendo was up to, and I wanted to find out from my friends across the industry, when did they know the Nintendo Switch was going to be a hit?
Honestly, I knew the Nintendo Switch was going to work since day one. As soon as I saw the trailer and the things you could do with it, with the Joy-Cons, playing this on the go or playing at home too with a bigger screen, I was like, this is going to work. I remember doing that kind of with the Wii U. It had potential, but I couldn't really go far with the device. But this one, man, game changer. When I went outside with my device, I was like, this is it. This is going to be a hit.
I knew the Switch was going to work when it was announced that it was a handheld and a console, and that it was so easy to switch between them. I mean, how could you go wrong with something like that?
I knew that the Switch was going to work when I first saw the trailer of Breath of the Wild at E3 2014, and then when I saw it on the handheld itself, I really got it. It was beautiful. All of a sudden, everyone was talking about Zelda again. Everyone was talking about this console. It really blew up from there, and I think that launch window was stacked. I think so many people couldn't wait to get their hands on it. The fact that you could play on your couch, pick up the console, and continue playing on the go was life-changing. Everything about it, just everyone wanted to get their hands on the Switch. That's when I knew it wasn't a gimmick, that it was here to stay.
I knew Nintendo Switch was going to work when they showed that initial long preview of people playing different games and in public and just being very focused on community and connection. This time around, more so than previously, because they did take the Wii U's technology of having a portable system and then changed it completely to make it so it could stand on its own.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a fortune teller or anything, but I kind of had a strong feeling the Switch was going to be a runaway success. Nintendo's never failed at handhelds before, except for maybe the Virtual Boy, but Once you take their handheld expertise and you merge it with a device that combines home console functionality, of course, it was going to be a mega hit. Now, there were some bad negative reviews come after that trailer when it was first revealed, and now all those authors got egg on their face for that, and they deserved it. I didn't expect it to have such enormous third-party support that it's been enjoying over its 8-year cycle, but it has, and it deserves it because it's my favorite console. I think it's the best console to ever come out, and it's just a ingenious device.
When did I know the Nintendo Switch was going to be successful? I hate to say it, but actually day number one. It was simply when I finally set up my Nintendo Switch, had Breath of the Wild playing on the big screen, and I stood up, grabbed it from the dock, and lifted it right out and went straight into handheld mode. And that moment that this massive open world game that looked so good on my television, I was having so much fun, was instantly transported into my hands, and I could take it anywhere. That was the moment I knew it was going to be a success. And of course, then I just put it back in the dock and saw how seamlessly easy that transition was. And that is the quintessential Nintendo magic that made the Nintendo Switch so successful.
Amazing responses. Thank you, everybody that has been contributing to this episode. It's really fun to celebrate the Switch this way, isn't it? I knew the Nintendo Switch was going to work only when I got my hands on it. Nintendo had a pre-release event in Toronto, and I was very fortunate to be invited to go and attend this event, much like the Nintendo Switch 2 event, which we had recently. And it was the first time that we got hands-on with the Switch as a platform. And Nintendo really decked it out. It was very much like a mini E3 back in 2017, little booths. I remember my favorite one was this idea of we were inside of an airplane and we got to play Mario Kart. And getting hands-on with Zelda and Mario Kart and Street Fighter Collection, there were a bunch of other little titles, ARMS. It was so freaking fun. It just really worked. And I remember the excitement of every attendee at that event. I was interviewing people about what they thought about the Nintendo Switch. And then a couple of months later, we got our devices. And I remember hanging with Johnny Millennium from Happy Console Gamer and unboxing the device and playing Zelda with him and my kid and realizing we had crossed a new divide here. This was a moment in video game history. And yes, Nintendo had done it with the Nintendo Switch. Okay, let's hear from a few more viewers giving us their thoughts on the Nintendo Switch. Justin Parr says, because it had Breath of the Wild and Odyssey in its first year. Jimmy Potato TV said, versatile and affordable, worked for family gaming and my own solo gaming interests. Batman's Raging Hog says, it's still ahead of its time. Zen Gamer Max boiled it down. He says, handheld home console hybrid, Zelda and Mario Kart on launch or launch window. Daniel Batista says, the Nintendo Switch fulfilled the promise of what the GBA was for me growing up. Games that felt larger than life with worlds I could carry with me. I spent countless hours lost in them. It brought that magic back and gave us the best entries in Zelda and Mario along the way. Can't really top that statement, so we won't try. We'll be right back with more thoughts about the Nintendo Switch. Welcome back to the Electric Playground gets outside and celebrates the Nintendo Switch as we transition over to the Nintendo Switch 2. Can't wait for the Nintendo Switch 2, but we've got a lot to talk about still with Nintendo Switch 1. I asked everybody what their favorite game was on the Nintendo Switch.
My favorite game on Nintendo Switch, I could say Super Mario Odyssey. I could say Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but I won't say those games. But I will say Tetris 99. Tetris 99, when everybody's making a battle royale game out there, they're killing each other, they're the last man standing over here. Tetris 99 comes in on the NSO, on Nintendo Switch Online, and my goodness gracious, the perfection of Tetris against 99 or 98 other people. Maybe you get into the top 50, maybe you make it to the top 20, the top 10, the music is going crazy, your heart is racing, you're wondering, how is that person still even in here? Excellent, Tetris 99. I love that game so much, so unexpected. I'm still playing it to this day. All the Maximus Cups, of course, but also shout out to Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let's be honest, that game's a masterpiece.
That's a tough question. There were lots of great games that I enjoyed playing on the Switch, but I think my all-time favorite has to be Luigi's Mansion 3. I was gonna say Breath of the Wild. It's a toss-up between both of those, but Luigi's Mansion 3 just holds a special place in my heart because I played it throughout the pandemic. Oh my god, that makes me think of Animal Crossing. Okay, I'm gonna stick with Luigi's Mansion 3. I think it was just such a fun, really great immersive game. It really helped me through a tough time during the pandemic, and it was my life source for an entire week and a half. So I have to give it to that one. Honorable mentions, obviously, Breath of the Wild and Animal Crossing. But yeah, some great, amazing games on that console. I love it.
My favorite Nintendo Switch game is easily Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. You know, it's been my favorite Nintendo series since I was a kid. Nothing really brings people together like Smash Bros. For better or worse, you know, you're having those rivalries with your friends. So it's got that nostalgia element, but also just, it felt like an event. Like every time there was a new character reveal, because this really was like a huge celebration of gaming. It's characters from all across the gaming space, not just Nintendo franchises. You have people from Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Castlevania, Street Fighter, Banjo and Kazooie, Minecraft. Like it really felt like this massive celebration of games. And the fact that we could all kind of share together in that, every time there was a new reveal, we'd all be hyping it up. We'd all be excited to see what Mr. Sakurai would be doing in this amazing reveal videos. So that's what I love most about it. It really celebrates the joy and excitement and thrill and communal experience of video games. That was Smash Ultimate to a T for me.
Hey, I'm Ryan McCaffrey with IGN, and my favorite game on the Nintendo Switch, and it wasn't even close. There's one that's head and shoulders above them all for me, and that's Super Mario Odyssey. This game, which I reviewed for IGN, it's one of the 2 10 out of 10s that I've given in my entire long career, 13 years at IGN. And boy, do I still think it's a 10 to this day. It's quite simply, it is just full of joy. It radiates joy. Playing it, just the basic moment-to-moment gameplay is incredibly fun. The art style is charming and fun. The vibe is just pleasant. It's just enjoyable. And quite honestly, the end of New Donk City, for somebody that grew up with Super Mario Brothers in the 80s and through the 90s and up through today, the end of New Donk City is one of the single most joyous gameplay moments that I've ever experienced in my 30-something years of gaming at this point. It is just spectacular. It was so well done, and the entire game is brilliant too. So shout out to Super Mario Odyssey. Full respect to Zelda and others, but for me, my heart with the Nintendo Switch 1 will always be with Super Mario Odyssey.
How can you not say Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom together? This sort of bookend of the Nintendo Switch console. This just amazing open world Zelda game where you got to explore. You walked out on the Great Plains in Breath of the Wild, that music hit, and you just saw everything. And the realization, I can go there. I can go anywhere that I see. And then, 7 years later approximately, to come out with the sequel to that, Tears of the Kingdom, and you're up in the sky, you're down in the underground, you're building all of these contraptions to a place that felt both familiar and new, all at the exact same time. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, 1-2 punch for the Nintendo Switch, and that was my absolute favorite game, and to take it with me anywhere, whether I was at home, in an airport, heading to school, wherever, I had that available to play, and that was such an incredible experience, become lost in those worlds. So yeah, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. How do you go wrong with that?
My favorite game with Nintendo Switch was Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that's because it just launched at such a unique time when people were still not familiar with what the Switch was trying to do, what Nintendo was trying to sell, and what the Zelda franchise was trying to be. So when this game launched, it was like a really unique launch for myself. The first open world Zelda game, it had open-ended storytelling, it had a lot of freedom to basically approach this world however you wanted to do. So if you wanted to do a critical path story run, you could do that. If you want to take your time and, invest into the world, you could do that. And it ended up being one of the most memorable games, basically reworked how the games industry would look at open world games for the next several years, and then it culminated in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom in 2023. And we all know how that ended up being 2 of the best-selling Nintendo Switch games of all time, and the rest is history.
Breath of the Wild, it's the obvious, basic, unsurprising answer, but that game really, really whisked me away. Like you want a Zelda game too, but it just just felt so different. It was like a completely different flavor of Zelda, one that we didn't even know we wanted, and it was incredible. Plus, the fact that it was a launch title, which is absolutely wild to have a game that huge, of that caliber, to be a launch title, just really, again, a home run. Also, I will say I'm an ARMS defender. I loved ARMS. I love the hell out of that game, and nobody wanted to play it with me.
I'm gonna have to sort of cheat slightly on this, but I think that they go hand in hand. Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. I really appreciate that ability to like just scale it all back. Like go back to what is a Zelda game, what is important about a Zelda game, what do we want it to communicate. You know, if you got to see some of the developer talks of their first prototypes using essentially the NES game as their playground to figure out like what do we want to do, how do we want things to work, rather than sticking to a formula that some people love and some people felt was, you know, getting fairly stale. They also really reinvented open world. Open world likewise had a huge fatigue, and with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it really felt like going anywhere is viable. Then this sense of playfulness, the way that you're able to use the Ultra Hand and the, you know, makeshift weapons and everything to find your own solutions to things. It's a testament to these games that even years and years later, you will see people create a video where they do something you never thought of before. I've spent over 200 hours in each of those games, so over 400 hours total. So I think that can easily be put down as my favorite game on the Switch.
Yo, what's going on, Vic? I would say the best game on the Switch that I play all the time would have to be Unicorn Overlord. I've been a fan of that game since the demo. When I saw the trailer, I didn't know what the game was about, but when I played that demo, I was instantly hooked. I've played that game 3 times through. There's so many different things you can do in that game. Different combinations of characters you could put in your army and your squads, and music's awesome. The battles are incredible. Vanillaware killed it. That's in my top 10 video games all time right now. I'm not sure where, but it's somewhere on that list of the top 10 games that I have. So yeah, easily Unicorn Overlord. Yeah, absolutely.
My favorite game on the Nintendo Switch was either Warframe or Pokemon Unite. I put 1,500 hours into both. I love Pokemon Unite. It's my favorite MOBA. Being able to bring Pokemon characters into a MOBA aspect is refreshing and very awesome and cool how they play. And Warframe came out on Switch, and I put in more than 1,500 hours, and it made me fall in love with the Canadian-led game.
Man, I had several games that I really enjoyed. One of my favorite games of the Nintendo Switch, honestly, has to be Mario Kart 8. Love Tetris Effect Connected, play that a lot too. And Streets of Rage 4. And believe it or not, The Witcher 3, I have more hours playing the Nintendo Switch than my Xbox and PC version. And the reason was because I was traveling a lot and I just love enjoying playing that game.
I'd have to say that my favorite game on the Nintendo Switch is probably The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but I don't even have that on the Switch because I play it on the Wii U, so it doesn't really count. So barring that, I would probably go with maybe Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble. It's amazing that they finally made a good Super Monkey Ball game, and it's perfectly tailored to the Switch.
Oh man, some great choices there. And yes, this is kind of a tough one to talk about because there have been excellent games on this platform. But I think you all know what my favorite is. It's Breath of the Wild still, which was the launch game. I was not prepared for how much Nintendo kind of shook up the formula and gave us something brand new, a breath of fresh air, so to speak, with this vaunted franchise. And they killed it. Breath of the Wild was absolutely incredible. The tougher question is, what is my second favorite game? And I've been thinking about this. I love Mario Odyssey. I think they did incredible stuff with Smash Bros. Ultimate. I loved Animal Crossing New Horizons. I love Luigi's Mansion 3, but I'm going in the direction of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which was way beyond expectations with that game. Over many years, all of the DLC, all of the racing I've done with my family, all of the racing I've done as I've been traveling around the world and visiting studios and stuff. I mean, this game is so friggin' good. It's been perpetually in my playlist. I've always gone back to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And of course, that makes me incredibly excited to see what Nintendo has done for Mario Kart World. As we're recording this, I've only had a little bit of time with this, and I cannot wait to review that game. All right, you guys, we will be right back with more thoughts on the Nintendo Switch 1. Welcome back to EP, celebrating the Nintendo Switch 1 as we are moving towards the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. I asked friends across the video game media community, what surprised you the most about the Nintendo Switch?
Man, my biggest surprise from this console has to be playing Tetris 99 for the first time. What? That was amazing. And also Mario Maker, seeing all the things that people were creating, like all the levels and everything. That was like a lot of fun for me. Biggest surprise for sure.
My biggest surprise with the Switch is probably the low-performing first-party games. Like, there's one of the Zelda games and one of the Pokemon games where the frame rate dips really low. It's very inconsistent in many scenes. And I would expect this with third-party games that are multi-platform, but first-party games, come on.
I don't know if I call this a surprise, but it's definitely something that I did not see coming. Okay, so when the Switch launched and they had, these Joy-Cons, you could do all, they really played up the HD rumble functions and all these crazy things you could do with them, like the Game 1-2 Switch, right? Doing all these weird activities. And I just thought, okay, that's a novelty, because they do that with every generation. They come up with some crazy thing dating all the way back to what? Robotic Operating Buddy with the NES. But fast forward to today, if I wanted to create a steering wheel system with cardboard, with Labo, I could do that. If I wanted to build a giant controllable robot backpack, I could do that. And if I wanted to build a VR blaster that you plug it into here, again, I basically have a whole recyclable gaming system that came out of the Nintendo Switch as well. It was actually a bunch of fun STEM projects to do with the kid during COVID. Ring Fit Adventure, you slide in a Joy-Con. This worked incredibly well. A really smart, really fun game that actually got me back in some semblance of shape, I should say, during COVID.
What surprised me the most about Nintendo Switch is that it's the jack of all trades. The amount of choice you have with so many different generations of games, remakes, remasters, and just straight up re-releases of so many titles from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, console, and arcades. It goes on and on. Every third party gravitated to it. So if you're a seasoned video game vet like me, the Switch was the perfect system for you to basically have the history of video games on your TV, and it was portable, able to take anywhere. Simply the best.
My biggest surprise is the Switch never got a price drop. 8 years after the fact, on the cusp of the Switch 2, and this machine has never gotten a price drop. I think that there has been that headroom. I think that Nintendo could have made a price drop and boosted the speed of the historic sales of this thing and gotten it into even more people's hands, but they've just opted not to do that. It's insane. And I think that as difficult as it might be for all of the console manufacturers, that's really hurting the industry overall. I know there are a lot of people like me that were growing up that could not get a console day one because of how much those things cost. And when, a $200 console went to $150 or $100, that was the wave of a lot more people to be able to come in and start playing these things. The Switch seems like it ended that era, and I feel bad for a lot of people that are growing up and not able to experience these games. A lot of people are gravitating towards free-to-play stuff and mobile stuff and things that are just a lot cheaper and, have strengths of their own, but it is keeping a lot of the younger generation from experiencing a lot of foundational games. Big surprise and kind of a worrisome sign for where we're at in the industry.
When I think about what is my biggest surprise for the Nintendo Switch, it would be The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The fact that they were able to pull off an open world Legend of Zelda game where I'm in Hyrule and I can literally go anywhere I want in the game at any time is such a phenomenal feat. And they were able to iterate and improve upon that with its sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. So kudos to Nintendo, kudos to the Legend of Zelda team for creating this. And it all works on the Nintendo Switch, be it in handheld mode or docked, playing on my living room television.
I would say the biggest surprise for me on the Nintendo Switch would be all the gems that are in that eShop. So many amazing games, especially with beat 'em ups. So they did such a great job with like River City Girls, Fight and Rage, Mother Russia Bleeds, Streets of Rage 4. Just so many gems in that eShop for an awesome price too. So, if a lot of people think games are expensive, you could always go to the eShop and, drop like $24, $25 and get yourself something of very good quality. So yeah, eShop for me. Most of my games that I own on the Switch are in the eShop. So yeah, definitely that.
The biggest surprise for Nintendo Switch for me was the ports and remasters and bundled collections that they brought in for a lot of games that I didn't get to play back in the day or play properly. Chocobo's Dungeon Everybody, the Castlevania collections, Etrian Odyssey games, Mega Man collections, and being able to easily play that on the go was wonderful and great. These full console games and being able to take them and play them on an airplane for a few hours and still have an engaging experience.
So for me, the biggest surprise with Nintendo Switch was really just how it fulfilled its destiny of becoming this home console that you take on the go. Like, I literally never left my house without my Switch. I took it with me everywhere on countless trips around the world. I was always looking forward to having my Switch with me on the plane. It's been to probably more countries than a lot of people because I just traveled with it so much. So yeah, that part really surprised me that for 8+ years, it was just like my little travel buddy, and I never left home without it.
That's a pretty cool question, isn't it? Because there's lots of great surprises in terms of software. Even the idea of the console as a hybrid was kind of a surprise. And all of those are valid, but I think the biggest surprise for me was Nintendo's new plan with its subscription service, Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack. And I know there's a lot of detractors out there. I know that people would prefer the virtual console system that was on previous Nintendo platforms. And I wouldn't mind if there was a choice of virtual console or the subscription, but I love the fact that Nintendo's done a pretty good job at collecting these libraries of classic essential games for all of these different platforms, and they've added to them with new machines, like when they did the expansion pack and added Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis, like that was a surprise. But then there always are these little surprise drops out of nowhere. There's no rhyme or reason to when Nintendo adds to these classic consoles. They just pop up. And when Donkey Kong launched, I knew it was coming eventually. I mean, this is going to be the year of Donkey Kong with Donkey Kong Bonanza coming up. But Donkey Kong 94 on the original Game Boy is one of the best games ever made. And it's such a beautiful treat to be able to play it on the Nintendo Switch OLED. I freaking adore that game. And I love that there is this constant sort of service to get people excited about the past, the glory days. And I don't know if they were just virtual console releases, if they would have that same impact. Like Nintendo creates videos and they kind of launch the news and you see the cycle everywhere, like people talking about, oh, this is being added and this is being added. I think it's absolutely hit its value in terms of its subscription price. And now we've got GameCube coming to the Nintendo Switch 2, which is great. Yes, it would be great if we could buy them and own them forever. And maybe Nintendo will change its policy on that down the road. But for now, it's really friggin' cool to be able to play all of these classic games. Let's hear from a few more viewers about their thoughts on Nintendo Switch 1. Megamat says it felt like something brand new at the time. It was that feeling you had playing Nintendo as a kid when you first booted up Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild. N-Clan says it was the console that introduced me to so many different Nintendo franchises. Yeah, I guess it was the first Nintendo console for a lot of people out there. Really, for my daughter Ruby, it was. Brett Wild says always first-party games with Nintendo. You know you will always get at least a handful of quality 9 or 10 out of 10 games. Clayton Cockle says Switch has been a friend during ups and downs, from my mother's passing to my diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, my wife's cancer diagnosis, and a year later almost dying from surgical complications. Switch helped take my mind off things. Forever grateful. Wow, Clayton, that is a big, big comment. I hope you are doing well. I hope your family is doing well. And I don't mean to trivialize everything you've been going through, but I do think that there's something there in the value of video games. It's not just endemic to Nintendo. It's just the creativity that video games allow for. Lets us escape and take our mind off of the real life things that can often be really hard and really heavy on us. So I wish you well. And I hope games find a way to bring us joy no matter what we're going through. All right, you guys, we'll be right back with more thoughts on the Nintendo Switch. Welcome back to the Electric Playground. Toast the Nintendo Switch 1. It's actually a little bit sad that we're saying goodbye to the Nintendo Switch 1, but not really. We know Nintendo is going to support this platform for a long time, and all of your favorite, well, most of your favorite Nintendo Switch 1 games will play on Nintendo Switch 2, so the Switch 1 lives on, and all of those incredible experiences live on. But I did ask people what they're going to miss the most about Nintendo Switch.
I'm really gonna miss the time where the Nintendo Switch just felt so special. It was completely unique. Now, with the rise of handheld gaming, you know, whether it's a PlayStation or an Xbox cloud streaming device or the ROG Ally or, of course, the Steam Deck, portable gaming is much more commonplace. But when the Nintendo Switch first released, I had so much excitement, almost childlike wonderment at playing some of these incredible games portably. It just felt so unique. It gave Nintendo that special Nintendo factor. The Switch 2, of course, is going to be special. It's Nintendo. It's always going to be special, but it's not going to have that, it's portable and you can play it on the TV thing, which I just thought was an amazing concept at the time. I'm glad Nintendo is keeping those concepts with the Switch 2, but now, you know, it's everywhere because Nintendo had paved the way for it, in my opinion.
I think what I'll miss most about the Switch is the simplicity of it. You know, it wasn't going for the best graphics, the most power. It was really just about the games and making games fun and bringing fun back to gaming. I think it let people get introduced to games in a way that might not have been possible before. It made it really just about great experiences. Some of the games that came out on that platform are so iconic and I just have so much love and nostalgia for the games I got to play on that console. I'm gonna miss it for being my go-to travel companion. I'm gonna miss the way it looks, and I'm gonna miss the way it feels and the way that it plays, and those are all the wonderful things I'm gonna miss about the Switch.
What will I miss most about the Switch? Gotta say, I'm probably gonna miss making fun of the multi-platform games that perform so much worse on the Switch than they do on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 and the Xbox, whatever. No one cares about Xbox anymore. But I'll miss making fun of those. I might still be able to make fun of the Switch 2 compared to like the newer consoles. I don't know, because I don't have a Switch 2 and I don't know how it performs, but it does give us 120 hertz and it does give us HDR, so there's probably not a whole lot to complain about. We'll see.
Man, what I'm gonna miss the most about the Nintendo Switch, just being there playing it for the first time. Honestly, that was like a crazy vibe experiencing that for the first time, you know, playing it on the go for the first time on a plane or train. I think that's the thing I'm gonna miss the most, just getting that experience for the first time, you know. But playing with friends and family when we were playing like certain games, like let's say like Mario Kart, using Joy-Cons on the little device, just the screen itself, that was pretty dope, doing that for the first time and everything. So I think I'm gonna miss that the most, just experience those special moments for the first time. But I'm excited for what's next with Nintendo Switch 2. I think that's going to be big too, man.
Hey everybody, I want to talk about something that I'm going to miss about the Nintendo Switch generation, and that is just how well fed Nintendo kept us with new game releases throughout the entire generation. I'm an old school Nintendo fan. I remember getting a Nintendo 64 and waiting months and months and months for a new game to come out, but on the Nintendo Switch, it seemed like almost every single month for over 7 years, like we got a cool new first-party Nintendo game that was worth our time, and it just made me feel like I never put the system down. I was always finishing up one great new game and moving on to the next, and that's not even mentioning all the great games on Nintendo Switch that came from companies that were not named Nintendo. So who knows? Maybe this is something that's going to continue on Nintendo Switch 2, but games are getting bigger, games are getting harder to make, so we don't know. So I'm just going to remember the special time that we had with Nintendo Switch, playing so many games that I just couldn't put it down.
Wow, so grateful for all of your insights and your comments and your great observations about the Nintendo Switch. Thank you to everybody that contributed a video. Very cool way to celebrate this console. It's time to get hyped for the Nintendo Switch 2 for sure. But what am I going to miss the most about Nintendo Switch 1? I'm going to miss the surprise of it all. As excited as I am for Nintendo Switch 2, and I know it's going to be a major upgrade technologically, and it's going to have all kinds of beautiful niceties that enhance the overall experience. I can't wait to play the enhanced versions of some of my favorite Nintendo Switch 1 games. I'm going to miss that surprise that I had every time I installed a game on my Switch 1, not knowing how I was going to interact with it, how I was going to enjoy it, or where I was going to play it even. It was all so brand new. And there isn't that so much with Nintendo Switch 2. We know what we're in store for. We know what the machine is going to be capable of giving us and how it's going to deliver it. And so the Nintendo Switch 1 will always be incredibly special. What an amazing platform. What an incredible achievement for Nintendo, the 150 million plus fans of that device all over the world. We are grateful. Thank you to Nintendo. Thank you to Nintendo Switch 1. And let's move on to Nintendo Switch 2. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for hitting that subscribe button and for sharing the video with your friends. Again, thank you to everybody that contributed and sent me comments, and for all of your comments down below. We will see you soon in another cool video, maybe talking about Nintendo Switch 2. And until then, play forever.